Hello, class. So today we're going to pick up right after the Greco-Persian War that we talked about last week and talk about the Golden Age in Athens, and then that's what led up to the Peloponnesian War. So just a quick explanation, a Golden Age is a time of growth and wealth and new ideas. And following the Peloponnesian War, the Greeks were united under the leadership of Pericles of Athens. The Greeks had preserved their independence by uniting against Persia, who was their common enemy. So today we see groups uniting against a common enemy pretty often. World War II, the um, United States and Britain and France all united against Germany, who was the common enemy. Right now, we're united against this coronavirus. And to make sure that they could defend against a future attack by Persia or any other empire, the city states formed the Delian League, which was dominated by Athens. So they came together and made an agreement to work together. And books talk about how Pericles, who was the leader of the Athenians, wanted to strengthen the empire. And you may be wondering what empire there was, because Athens was just a democratic city state. So why do books call Athens an empire? Well, many historians refer to Athens as an empire during this time period because Athens controlled the Delian League, which was made up of the other city states. So even though they each city state had their own government, Athens was the leader of this Delian League, so they were seen as the leader of the Greek people, kind of like with the modern day UN, how like the United States has a lot of power in the United Nations, so we're seen as kind of the leader. So to be a part of the Delian League, these different city states had to pay Athens to be members of this league, and their dues were supposed to be used to strengthen the navy, which had been effective in defeating Persia during the Persian Wars. So the dues were the other city states were basically paying Athens so Athens would protect them. But instead of building up a navy, Athens assembly used a lot of the money to rebuild the city of Athens. So we talked about how Athens got burnt down during the Greco-Persian Wars. So they used this money to rebuild the city, including the temples and the Parthenon and all the different beautiful buildings out of expensive material like marble. So this angered Sparta. And so Sparta resented Athenian domination and misuse of league funds. It then formed its own league. Many of its allies broke away from the Delian League and joined Sparta's league, which was called the Peloponnesian League. Its purpose was to defend Sparta and league members against aggressors, including other city states. So Sparta was like, hey, Athens, you're not using the money the way we're supposed to, so we're going to start our own group. And the city states around Sparta was like, yeah, you're right. Athens is abusing their power, so we're going to join you. So Sparta getting jealous of Athens leads to the Peloponnesian War, which happened between 431 and 404 BC. And Sparta and Athens both wanted control of Greece. So you see on this map here, Sparta is right here and Athens is over here, and they all wanted control of this whole region. So some of the causes is many Greek cities resented Athens' domination of the Delian League, and some even revolted against Athens. And Sparta and Athens were already longtime rivals, so this just gave Sparta the reason to create the Peloponnesian League to oppose the Delian League. And both sides were overconfident because both sides believed they held advantages over the other. So Athens had a better navy and had the advantage at sea, and Sparta had an advantage on the land. And since they both thought they would win, they moved towards war. So if one side thought they would lose, then they might have negotiated peacefully, but both sides thought they were going to win a war if it led to war, so it ends up leading to war. And here's a map showing the different allies. So the green is Athens' allies, and you see Ionia and the Persian Greek parts are allies of Athens because Athens is the one that really helped Ionia. The yellow is Sparta's allies, and you can see Macedonia is now an ally of Sparta. They used to be an ally of Persia when we were talking about the Greco-Persian Wars, but now Macedonia is an ally of Sparta, which is key because, like we've mentioned, Alexander the Great comes from Macedonia. And then these orange city areas are neutral, so they decided not to take a side. So again, a lot of the places that were neutral during the Persian Wars remain neutral during the Peloponnesian War. So some of the economics behind the war is that Athens stopped Corinth, who was a ally of Sparta, from taking over another city state, and they laid siege to the colony of Corinth. And then Athens slapped Megara with trade sanctions, which just means they could not trade with any allies of Athens, which was a death blow to their economy. So Corinth and Megara convinced Sparta to go to war with Athens. So again, these things is like Athens abusing their power. And on this map, Athens is here, Sparta's here, Corinth is right here, kind of in the middle of the two, and Megara is right here in the middle of the two. And by Athens overstepping their bounds and telling Corinth and Megara what they were going to do, this angered them, which led to the war. So we've talked about how Athens' main strength was its naval power. So Athens thought that they could surround Sparta by sea and prevent food and supplies from reaching the Peloponnesian League. So that was Athens' strategy. And then Sparta, their main strength was their strong army. And they thought they could surround Athens by land and prevent it from raising food around the city. And Athens didn't have a navy until the end of the war. So Athens was going to prevent food by surrounding the outside land, and Athens was going to prevent food by surrounding Sparta by navy. And here's a map of some of the different battles and different things and maneuvers. So Sparta sent soldiers in by land and then sent soldiers up here to attack these ports, and then Sparta sent their ships out and had their ships travel around through here, just patrolling this area to try to stop Sparta from getting any materials. So, because each side had the upper hand in different areas, it led to a stalemate. So, for much of the war, neither side could gain the upper hand over the other. And with a few short periods of peace in between, the war lasted for 30 years. So there wasn't a lot of direct conflict with this war. It was mostly just blockading each other and stopping each other from getting supplies. So this led to a stalemate, or nobody gaining the upper hand or an advantage. What ends up doing Athens in is a plague comes about. So a plague's just a disease or sickness. And because Athens was trapped in the city, they couldn't get rid of their waste and things in a healthy manner. So sickness started popping up, and Athens was severely weakened when this plague broke out, and it killed almost 1/3 of the population. So you think this coronavirus is bad? Well, the coronavirus has only killed about 1% of the United States population. This killed 33% of Athens' population. So there's a big difference between 33% and 1%. So the coronavirus isn't nearly as deadly as this plague. And one of the people that died was Pericles, who was Athens' leader. So this guy here is Pericles, and Athens' leader died. And when your leader dies abruptly, it tends to be a bad thing. So then another mistake that Athens made was the Syracuse expedition. So in 416 BC, Athens invaded Sicily to conquer Sparta's ally, Syracuse. So you look at this map, and this red line going over here goes to Sicily, which is this island, and Syracuse is this green little dot on this island. So the Athens traveled pretty far away to get to a region of Sparta's allies. So this Syracuse expedition, they were hoping to destroy the Spartans' food supply, but instead they were surrounded and annihilated. So Athens already lost a third of their population due to plague, and now they're sending an army to go to Sicily and capture Syracuse, but instead this army gets defeated. So now their population's really low. So after this happens, the war comes to an end. So Syracuse weakened them and weakened the Athenians, but they held out for more than 10 years after getting weakened, and the Spartans finally conquered Athens in 404. And Athens had to give up its navy and the empire, and Athens had to follow Sparta's foreign policy. So the winner determines the punishments. And so to prevent Athens from rising back up, Sparta said, you have to get rid of your navy and you have to listen to our rules now. And we know about the Peloponnesian War from the historian Thucydides, who is the father of scientific history because of standards for evidence collecting. So last week we talked about how Herodotus just gathered a bunch of stories and didn't fact check or anything. Well, Thucydides fact checked. So the history of the Peloponnesian War that we have is a lot more accurate because Thucydides created reliable writings about it. So some of the aftermath was Athens was the strongest, although Sparta was victorious. So Athens was still in their golden age, and even though they lost, they were still technically stronger than Sparta, but the disease really wiped them out. And then much of Greece lied in ruin. So whenever you have war, a lot of stuff gets destroyed, and we've only had one war in our country, the Civil War, but rebuilding after the Civil War was a struggle. And this was basically a Greek civil war because a civil war is just a war of people of the same group, like nationality, fighting. So Greece as a whole was severely weakened economically and militarily, and Greek culture slowed. So this part right here of weakened economically and militarily is going to be key. That guy Alexander that I've mentioned a few times from Macedonia, he's going to take advantage of this, and that's going to be the second lesson for this week. So the result of the Peloponnesian War is the war had resulted in the deaths of many of their citizens. Orchards, vineyards, and fields had been destroyed. The treasuries of the city-states had been destroyed, and faith and democracy had been renounced. As a result of the Peloponnesian War, Greece became weaker and poorer. And then in 338 BCE, led by Philip II of Macedonia, he conquered Greece. So the Peloponnesian War is what led to the Greek Empire being conquered. So for your assignment for this week about the Peloponnesian War, you have this short reading to do, and you're just going to read the article and then read and complete the questions, and you're analyzing why Athens and Sparta went to war, your criteria of doing it successfully is listed there. And then if you don't do it successfully, the reasons why are here. But basically, you need to just answer all the questions in full sentences using the provided information. For the reading part, if you don't want to read it yourself, or if you struggle with reading or anything, you can use Read Write for Google. So if you haven't installed Rewrite, it'll be up here in the top right hand corner up here, which I haven't installed it on this browser, but that's where you install it at. And then Read Write can read this to you, and you can also use Read Write to type in the boxes. And these boxes here are where you type your answers into. So we've done similar stuff to this, and it looks like a lot, but really it's not that much because these different pictures break it up. So don't be scared by the length. It's actually not as long as it looks. And if you have any questions, you can leave a private comment on the assignment on Google Classroom. So that's the assignment for the Peloponnesian War, focusing on Athens and Sparta going to war and the downfall of the Greek Empire.